Westerners are terrible at playing the long game. Perhaps an unfortunate byproduct of our modern democratic republics, the West at large can't see past the next election, the next decade. The farthest most can see is morbidity of the grave, thinking if my world ends there, so it must for everyone else. But if the West is to be saved, our minds must be stretched to see beyond our own lifetimes, like the enemies of the West do every day in preparation in the shadow of Western hegemony. We may not save ourselves, but we can save our children. In fact, all of our hope rests in them. But first we must get to having children at all. If we view the past, our traditions, religion, morality, sense of beauty, as something handed down to us, we inevitably recognize a duty to pass on this inheritance. And if we don't pass on these cornerstones of Western civilization to the next generation, they and the West inevitably die with us. But here's how the West can be saved. The Western inheritance is something to be carried forward and multiplied, not tucked neatly into our coffins with us upon burial. So the first key to saving the West is to have children, something biblically recognized as a great blessing from God, but ignored even by many Christians today. Virtually all blessings from God require a receptivity on the part of mankind. The Virgin Mary had to answer affirmatively to God's message that she would conceive the Son of Man. All children born in the manner of God's ethic arise from this receptivity to life. The blessings of children require first an openness to this blessing. The truth is, having children is the great nation builder. A little math applied to a family rightly ordered toward God and receptive to his blessing grows into a nation surprisingly quickly. Remember God's promise to Abraham, quote, "I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give them all these lands. And in your descendants all the nations of the earth will find blessing." From Genesis chapter 26. If every child in a 5-child family grows to marry and have 5 more children, the original parents will become the grandparents of 25 children. Another generation of this pattern, and they become the great-grandparents to 125 children. If great-grandchildren do the same when they are great-grandparents, the now 7th generation will total 15,625. In contrast, if every set of parents only has 2 children, the 7th generation will tally a mere 64 people. This is in fact a dying people below the typical replacement rate of about 2.1. Now imagine the town of 15,000 coming into contact with a village of 64 people in a conflict of ideals. Whose beliefs do you think will shape the laws of that region? The most lasting impact on the world one can have is their children. Scale this to proportions of modern nations, and we quickly find that the ideologies that promote more children over less will inevitably win out, particularly in nations with a democratic bent to their governments. The many voices of pro-children ideologies will drown out those whose ideologies ignored or denigrated the importance of having children. Now let's move on to what I'll call the family dynasty. Generational thinking need not stop at merely having children, however, but continue by maintaining strong familial bonds into adulthood. The mindset of the family for the past century has largely been to go off separate ways, coming together again only for holidays, historically Thanksgiving or Christmas. But a community of families is stronger than a community of strangers. These familial ties need not be so thin in adulthood. Brothers and sisters really should consider proximity to each other a great advantage at all stages of life. Likewise, parents and grandparents should think about how the family can better preserve, grow, and use its resources across generations, like the great aristocratic families of Central Europe, albeit admittedly in smaller quantities for most of us. In that regard, we are custodians of our wealth and property for the sake of our offspring. The object of that caretaking, the family's sum total of their inheritance and earned property, becomes something that multiple generations will hopefully participate in, grow, and pass on down the ages. The inherent necessity to make that a possibility, however, is virtue. In wanton hands, the wealth of a family can be destroyed by the carelessness and selfishness of a few ungrateful children. To the virtuous go the fortunes, to the wicked, the dust. So why not think of your family as another Medici, another Habsburg dynasty? Familial wealth, but more importantly, familiar priority, is the same in kind, if not in scale, across the many first world nations. What the great aristocrats of the past had was a keen sense of duty to family and legacy that's absent from the modern middle class. Though there are increasingly numerous reasons for sons to forsake their parents, or lack thereof in the culture of broken families today, even in well-formed families, the expectation is that each generation is an island, upon which he will build a castle or drown in the tide by his sweat or tears alone. And if indeed he does build a castle, he will only consider its usefulness to his prodigy as an afterthought. Next, let's move to our moral roots. The final part of thinking generationally is to instill the moral foundations for the family, namely to go to church. But I have to clarify here what kind of church. A safe bet is the historical church, the one that claims a direct line to Christ and his apostles. But at the least, that church must be coherent with the spirit of the West. It cannot hate its own tradition. It cannot blatantly disregard the demands of the Bible and Christ. It cannot be a church that molds its moral stances and attitudes to the culture. In visuals, it will appear alien to the modern youth. In sound, the churchgoer will hear music or bells or chants foreign to anything on the radio. The church must stand out to capture anyone's attention at all, from the ocean of secular influences and from the sea of churches that sway with the wind. Setting up the next generation and continuing ours to be a moral one is just as important as having another generation to raise up. By building the foundation of the next generation in the church, the family will stand on the same cornerstone as the West itself. Lastly, let's talk about the scourge of the generations. So generational thinking died at the hands of a few philosophies over the centuries, but most acutely those developed only in the last 100 years, let's say. The earlier philosophies are those of a kind of Americanism, a loose philosophy, albeit not without several merits, based on a historical American spirit of individualism now more typical of libertarianism than any other current political party. Now, despite its many merits of patriotism and personal responsibility, Americanism tends to weaken the bonds between the generations in a family. The young are often rushed off, often to faraway places, to get an education at college or to make a living, and all too often before securing their own moral footing. Other philosophies or movements detrimental to thinking generationally naturally include the social ideas of communism, socialism, and feminism. The first two inherently demote the family to a place beneath the state and drive a wedge between father and son. Communism in an authoritarian way, socialism in an understated subversion of the natural obligations between family members. That we rely not on family but on the state for all security from poverty. The third movement of feminism destroyed generational thinking by more circuitous means. The displacement of the mother from the home not only led the modern age into a slavery to double incomes, but more egregiously denigrated marriage itself, the foundation of the family. This inevitably increased divorce rates, estranged children from one or both parents, and made the individual the core of society over the family. Generational thinking is impossible in a world with no regard for the institution of marriage. The intact family is foundational to a moderated society. It is the base of the pyramid to which the dual complementary ideas of solidarity and subsidiarity apply across a society. Without the family, subsidiarity breaks down such that matters typically handled within a family must be elevated to the cold judiciary of the state. Likewise, where the family disintegrates, the closest forms of solidarity, love between husband and wife, the bonds between brother and sister, are lost to the world. They cannot be replaced by a higher relationship in society. After God, the West was built on families. For the West to enter springtime again, the family must flourish. Now let's talk about the road ahead. All revivals inherently require a period of decay and destruction. The light at the end of the tunnel is not reached without first going through the darkness. The great flood destroyed the world, only for Noah and his offspring to re-civilize it. Christ died so that he could rise again. The early church experienced severe oppression in the transformation of the Roman Empire. The Carolingian Renaissance blossomed out of the quiet of the post-Roman fall. Alfred the Great revived English power and learning in a period of overbearing Viking aggression. An American hegemony emerged from the darkness of World War II. These periods of national and civilizational chastisement offer the opportunity for revitalization. So too, the West may need to be plunged into a period of darkness in order to rediscover its spirit. This is not, as I've come to recently realize, something to dread or fear. It's no historical secret that all earthly empires will rise and fall, America included. Believing an eternal darkness is coming is one thing, a very unchristian belief in fact. But knowing that it is a transient darkness is another thing entirely. So on the eve of the West's greatness, our best course is not only to prepare for the night, but more importantly to prepare for the morning afterwards. And so we do that with great hope. We do that by raising strong, God-fearing children that will boldly carry forward the West torch in the dark. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed our content, be sure to like and subscribe, and hit the bell to get notifications in the future. Also be sure to go check out our Substack for more content like this, where we post in-depth essays on history, culture, and all the subjects that brought you to our channel today. Until next time.